They tried to take everything from me, so I took it back. There are hospitals in this country that will save your life instantly, if you can afford it. That's the part nobody says out loud, and they'll dress it up with words like policy, insurance, priority, eligibility. But when you strip all that down, when you take away the clean floors and the soft voices and the glass doors that open without anybody touching them, it comes down to one thing. If you have money, they move fast. If you don't, they look through you like you're already gone. I used to think hospitals were places people wanted to be saved. I believed that because I had to. When you have a sick kid, hope becomes a job. You wake up with it. You carry it all day long. You lie with it at night, even when your chest feels too heavy to breathe. My son Chase was dying, and every morning I told myself the same thing. There has to be a way. There has to be somebody. There has to be one door in this whole country that opens for people like us. And there wasn't. Nora, Chase, and I lived in a room most people wouldn't use for storage. One room, a mattress on the floor, a little hot plate that worked when it felt like being generous, a cracked window that let in more cold air than sunlight. No running water, no bathroom. We had a bucket, a jug, and a schedule for when the public washrooms were least crowded. That was our life. We didn't call it poverty. Poverty sounded too clean. Poverty sounded like a word people used in reports. What we had was smaller than that, meaner than that. It was waking up every day and negotiating with basic needs like they were luxury items. Chase never complained the way he should have. That was the part that broke me most. He was a kid. He should have been angry. He should have been demanding and throwing things, asking for answers that I didn't have. Instead, he made jokes. He gave his bad liver a name. Elroy. I don't know where he got it from. One morning, he just pressed both hands against his stomach and said, "Elroy's being dramatic again." I laughed because he wanted me to laugh. Nora laughed too, but I could hear the crack in it. After that, Elroy became part of the family. If Chase couldn't eat, it was Elroy's fault. If Chase slept too long, Elroy was being lazy. If Chase got one of those sudden bursts of energy that scared us more than comforted us, he'd say, "Don't get excited. Elroy's just showing off." That kid had no idea how brave he was. Or maybe he did. And he was just kind enough not to make us watch him be scared all the time. Across the city, there were hospitals that looked like they belonged in a future we weren't invited to. Glass towers, private entrances, lobby waterfalls, and air so clean it probably had a membership fee. Rich people walked in sick and walked out repaired. Like the body was a car and all they needed was the right mechanic. Nobody asked them to wait 6 months. Nobody told them to file an appeal. Nobody said, "We'll call you if something opens up." People like us didn't get in without money, insurance, or connections. And we had none of those. We had paperwork that proved Chase was sick, but not enough money to make anyone care. We had test results. We had old prescriptions. We had a folder full of medical language that all meant the same thing. Your son needs help now. But help is not the same as access. That's what I learned. The care existed, the medicine existed, the doctors existed, the surgeries existed. The liver Chase needed wasn't some impossible miracle from the sky. It was out there, somewhere cold, clean, protected, just waiting for the right person. Just not my son. Chase wasn't dying because he couldn't be saved. He was dying because we couldn't pay. The first time I brought him to the hospital, I lied. Not a big lie, not a smart lie. Just the kind of sad little lie a desperate man tells because the truth already failed. I told Chase we had an appointment. I told him they were finally going to look at him. I told him to put on his clean shirt, the one Nora washed in the sink and dried by hanging it over the chair near the window. He asked if they were going to fix Elroy. I said, they're going to try. And I hated myself before we even left the room. The hospital doors opened for us like they opened for everyone. That was the cruel trick. For 1 second, you think you're inside. You think the building itself doesn't know you're poor yet. The floors shine. The air smells like lemon cleaner and money. People speak softly, like volume itself is rude. Chase looked around like we had entered a spaceship. Then we reached the desk. The woman behind the glass didn't even pretend. She asked for a patient number. I gave her Chase's name. She asked for insurance. I gave her the papers. She looked at them for maybe 3 seconds before sliding them back like they were contaminated. There's no appointment listed. I know, I said, but he needs help. She glanced at Chase, not at his face, at his clothes, at mine, at the folder in my hand. Emergency intake is not available here without authorization. He's dying. I'm sorry. That was the first time I realized I'm sorry can mean absolutely nothing. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded trained. Like they had a whole class on how to say it without absorbing any of the pain. And Chase looked up at me, confident. He didn't understand all the words, but he understood the room. Kids always do. They understand when adults stop looking at them like children and start looking at them like problems. Outside, Nora didn't cry. That scared me more than if she did. She just looked at me and said, Jack, we are running out of time. I knew it. She said, no, I don't think you do. And she was right. So I started looking places good people pretend don't exist. Back rooms, alley clinics, men who knew doctors who lost their licenses, but not their hands. Everyone had a price. Everyone had a story, and everyone said they could help until they heard we didn't have enough. The underground world wasn't a way around the system. It was the system wearing dirtier clothes. Same rules, same hunger, same answer. Money first, life second. A man in a dark alley told me that he could get Chase moved up. That was the phrase he used, moved up, like my son was waiting in line for concert tickets. He said there are ways. He said organs moved all the time. He said the rich weren't the only ones who knew how to bend the rules. Then he named a number so high, I almost laughed in his face. I just told him I didn't have that. He shrugged and said, then why you don't have a way? That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was cruel, because it was honest. And Chase got worse after that. His skin took on a color no child should have. Yellow-gray, like old paper. Some days he couldn't stand without holding the wall. And some nights he woke up crying, but tried to hide it, like his pain was an inconvenience to us, telling it to stop being embarrassing. I went outside that night, and I punched the brick wall until my knuckles split. And then I sat there in the dark with blood on my hand and finally said the truth in my head. No one is coming, not the doctors, not the hospital, not God, not luck, no one. That's when something in me went quiet. Not calm, it was quiet, and there's a difference. Calm is peace. Quiet is when the screaming stops because another part of you is taken over. I stopped asking what I was allowed to do. I started asking what had to be done. I studied the hospital, and at first I told myself I was just watching. That's how you lie to yourself in the beginning. You make the first step sound smaller than it is. I wasn't planning anything. I was observing. I wasn't crossing a line. I was learning where the line was. I sat across from the loading dock at night under a bus shelter that smelled like wet cigarettes and old rain. I watched vans come and go. I watched staff badges flash against scanners. I watched who hurried and who didn't. I watched which doors were guarded and which ones were only guarded by routine. Routine is lazy. Routine believes tomorrow will look like yesterday. That was my opening. Every night, the hospital moved things through the back. Supplies, equipment, blood, organs. Some came in plain containers, some in locked medical coolers, some with 2 people, some with 4. The more important the delivery, the less noise they made. That was the first thing I noticed. Real power doesn't announce itself. It just moves quickly while everyone else looks away. I wrote down times, not just words, patterns. A line for a van, a circle for security, a star for a cooler. I became the kind of man who noticed shoes, hand signals, which guard drank coffee at 11:40, which nurses smoked by the side door, which camera turned too slowly to matter. I already knew Chase's blood type from the folder we carried everywhere, like a useless passport. What I needed was the right match, the right day, the right container. I didn't hack anything. I didn't break into some glowing computer system like people do in movies. I just watched. I just listened. I put the pieces together. And the underground contact had mentioned enough without meaning to. Certain tags, certain times, certain shipments that mattered more than others. Hospitals love codes because codes make evil feel organized. 3 nights in a row, I watched a white transport van arrive late, always under extra care. On the 4th night, it came with a cooler marked only by a color strip and a scan tag. That tag matched a note I'd seen on a copied schedule. The blood type matched Chase. I remember staring at the paper until the numbers blurred. That was it. The liver existed. It was real. It was not for him. It was scheduled for someone rich. Someone whose name I never learned and honestly didn't want to. It's one of the ugly parts I still carry. I know there was someone else. I know they had a family too. I know I became the kind of man who could look at the fact and still keep moving. Desperation doesn't make you noble. It makes you choose. And quietly, while I studied deliveries and doors, I noticed other things too. Financial things. Accounts tied to shell companies, routing numbers on invoices, payment systems no normal patient ever saw. The hospital wasn't just treating the rich, it was feeding off them. Hiding money in places nobody looked because nobody believed a poor man would even know what he was seeing. But I didn't let myself think about that yet. First, I had to save Chase. The next morning, I told him we were going back. He smiled. Appointment? I nodded. Appointment. Nora looked at me like she wanted to ask 100 questions, but she only asked one. Are you sure? I said no. That was one of the most honest things I'd said in weeks. We walked into the hospital like we belonged there. You don't hurry, you don't hide, you let the building assume it had already approved you. At the right moment, I told Chase to sit and wait. I said I had to talk to someone. I said I'd be right back, and he nodded like a good kid because he was a good kid. I slipped into the service corridor when a cart blocked the camera line. I moved past storage like I had done it 1,000 times. My heart was beating so hard, I thought someone would hear it through the walls. The cooler was exactly where I knew it would be. It was heavier than I expected. And that's such a stupid thing to remember, but I do. The weight of it. The clean plastic handle, the coldness through my fingers, a whole life inside a box. As I walked through the halls, a man in a suit checked his phone and moved aside from me like I was almost supposed to be there. That part almost made me laugh. The only time rich people don't see you is when you're carrying something important for them. I went back to Chase. He looked at the cooler and said, "What's that?" I said, "Something we need." He didn't ask another question. That was the moment I knew he was scared. A surgeon walked past us toward a private room, blue scrubs, tired eyes, clipboard in hand. That made it harder. I wanted a villain. I wanted sharp teeth, a cruel smile. Instead, I got a man at the end of a long shift who probably wanted coffee and sleep. But yet, I followed him. He stepped inside the room, the door closed, and I pulled the gun. The sound he made wasn't a scream. It was smaller than that. A breath getting trapped. I told him he was going to perform the transplant right now. He stared at me like his mind couldn't place me in the room. Poor man, dirty hoodie, gun, medical cooler, and a dying child. He whispered no. So I simply said, yes. Chase stood behind me, frozen. I could feel him there. I didn't have to look. The whole room changed for him in 1 second. His father was no longer just his father. His father was a stranger with a gun. He started crying. That sound cut through me worse than anything. I snapped at him. "Chase, quiet. Do what I say." The second I said it, I wanted to take it back. His face changed again. Not confusion now, fear. He obeyed because he was afraid of me. And I will never forgive myself for that. The surgeon lifted his hand slowly. "You don't understand what you're asking." I understand exactly what I'm asking. "Sir, this isn't how surgery works." "Then make it work." Before he could answer, the alarms went off. Full lockdown. Red lights flashed across the walls. A voice came over the speakers, calm in that awful hospital way, telling everyone to remain in designated areas. Doors clicked shut down the hall. Footsteps started moving faster outside, and the surgeon looked at me. I looked at the door. And in that moment, the plan died. Not the goal, the plan, and there's a difference. I knew that if we stayed in that room, they would find us before the first cut. If they found us, Chase died. Maybe not right there, maybe not that day, but he died. Because they would take that liver back, they would put it where they believed it belonged. They would call it recovery. I grabbed gowns from a shelf and shoved one at Chase. My hands were moving up before my brain could catch up. "Put this on." He fumbled with it, crying now, trying to be fast. I put one on over my hoodie. It didn't fit right, but I didn't care. Then I stepped behind the surgeon and pressed the gun into his back. Walk. We stepped into chaos. Doctors rushed past us. Nurses pushed carts. Security moved in the wrong direction because alarms make people stupid. Everyone had a task, a lane, a piece of the emergency they were supposed to handle. That was the only reason we had a chance. And we walked fast, but not too fast. I think that was the trick. Running makes people look, but walking with purpose makes people move. Chase stayed close, too close. I could feel him bumping my side. The surgeon's shoulders were stiff under my hand. Every few steps, he tried to slow down. And every time, I pushed him forward. We passed one guard, then another. One of them looked up at us, and I mean, really looked. I nodded like I belonged there. He looked away. I don't know if he bought it or if God blinked. Either way, we kept moving. Outside, the rain hit my face like a slap. I got Chase into the back seat, shoved the cooler beside him, and forced the surgeon into the passenger side. For a second, all I heard was Chase breathing. Then I drove. I didn't know where I was going at first. Not really. I just knew I had to get away from that building. The surgeon was trembling beside me, hands pressed together, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then he reached for the door. He panicked. Maybe he thought he could jump. Maybe he thought if he got out, this would all become someone else's nightmare. I grabbed for him with one hand while keeping the other on the wheel. "Don't!" He twisted. Chase screamed from the back. The car jerked. And the gun went off. For a half second, the world went silent. Then the surgeon folded against the seat. I didn't mean to shoot him. I didn't mean to. I kept saying that like it mattered. It didn't matter. Now the only man alive who might save my son had a wound of his own. And I was the reason. I pulled over so hard the tires slid against the wet curb. Rain hammered the windshield. Chase was crying. The surgeon was making a wet, broken sound through his teeth. I leaned across him, placing my hands where he told me to press, because even half conscious, even bleeding, he was still the doctor in the car. "Pressure," he gasped. "Keep pressure." So I did. I pressed down and begged him not to die. That's the part nobody puts in stories. The begging, and not the brave kind. Not the dramatic kind. The ugly begging. The kind where your voice cracks and your hands shake and you promise things to a man you just destroyed. "You have to live," I told him. "You have to live long enough to save him." And he looked at me and there was hatred in his eyes. That's fair enough. I would have hated me too. I probably do hate myself. But he stayed alive. I drove home with one hand on the wheel and the other one reaching over to him to keep him upright. Chase was silent in the back, not crying anymore, and that was worse. When we got to the room, Nora opened the door before I knocked. She saw me first, then Chase, then the cooler, and then the surgeon. Her face did something I had never seen before. It didn't break. It hardened. She understood in one look that we were past the point of choices. There was no calling anyone, no explaining, no fixing this in a way that left us clean. I dragged the surgeon inside. Nora cleared the table without asking. She moved like someone inside a nightmare who knows screaming would just waste time. Pots went to the floor. Towels came out. A lamp got moved. Our whole life became a surgery room in less than 2 minutes. And the surgeon looked around and said, "This is insane." I just told him, "Then hurry." He stared at Chase, and something changed in him. Not forgiveness, not kindness exactly, but recognition. For the first time, he stopped looking at the gun, stopped looking at me, and looked at the boy, and I mean really looked. Chase was shaking, trying to be brave, trying to pretend this was just another appointment, another room, another adult who knew what he was doing. The surgeon closed his eyes for 1 second, and then he told me, "Boil water." The room wasn't ready, the tools weren't right, and nothing was controlled. Nothing was clean enough. We had towels where there should have been drapes, kitchen light where there should have been surgical lamps, fear where there should have been medicine. The surgery was chaos. Time stopped being time. It became breathing, counting, and praying. Nora held Chase's hand until her knuckles went white. I stood behind the surgeon, no longer pointing the gun, because at that point the gun didn't matter. We were all trapped inside the same thing. The surgeon worked while fighting his own pain, sweat rolling down his face. His hands shook once, and my heart almost stopped. He cursed under his breath, Nora whispering to Chase, Chase drifting in and out and saying things that didn't make much sense. At one point, he asked if Elroy was mad. Nora put her forehead against his hand and said, No, baby. Elroy's just tired. I turned away because I couldn't hold that in my chest and keep standing. Then the surgeon said nothing for a long time. That silence nearly killed me. Finally, he leaned back, not smiling, not relieved, just empty. "It's working," he said. 2 words. That's all. It's working. Nora made a sound I'd never heard come from another human being. Half laugh, half sob, half prayer. I know that's 3 halves. I don't care. That's what it was. I grabbed her and she grabbed me. And for a second there, we weren't criminals. We weren't desperate. We weren't ruined. We were parents whose son was still alive. But while all this was happening, while everyone thought the worst thing I had done was steal a liver, there was another part of the night that no one saw. The small things I had tracked were not random. Those nights outside the loading dock, I wasn't just watching coolers, I was watching systems. You see, the hospital built through layers. Donors and patients and shell companies, emergency trusts with names that sounded like charities and acted more like vaults. Money moved in loops, so fast and so hidden, no one questioned it because everyone important was getting fed. But they made one mistake. They assumed that poor meant stupid. I used what I saw. Numbers from invoices, timing from transfers, access points left open because nobody thought a man like me could even understand what he was looking at. So that night, while Nora sat exhausted and the surgeon washed his hands like he was there trying to scrub off the entire universe, I sat in the corner with a phone. Tap. Tap. Swipe. Confirm. Move. Send. I didn't steal money like a thief in a mask. I redirected a river they had already poisoned. Fast, clean, and gone. Within an hour, the money disappeared through names and banks and places I'd never been. By the time anyone noticed, it was already too far to pull back. No one knew it was me. They thought I was just a desperate father. That was their second mistake. Then the hospital shut down. At first, nobody understood what had happened. A private hospital doesn't just stop working. Rich people are not used to doors being closed in their faces. They stood outside with their phones in hands and disbelief on their faces, like the building had personally insulted them. And the news spread fast. Systems were offline, their bank accounts frozen, and procedures significantly delayed. Nobody said stolen, at least not at first. They said disruption, and they said failure. They said unexpected financial collapse. Rich people love soft words for hard things, but the poor understood. Maybe not the details, maybe not the money, but they understood what it meant when a building that had rejected them suddenly couldn't save itself. People started showing up, angry and loud and desperate. Not because of me, not really. I was just the match. The fire had been waiting for years. They gathered outside private hospitals and wealthy clinics. People held up old bills, denial letters, pictures of family members they had buried because no one behind the glass said no. Some screamed, some stood silent, some just wanted to be seen by a building that had ignored them their whole lives. Security guards tried to push them back, but that only made it worse. Then something happened I didn't expect. Some doctors started helping anyway. And at first, quietly, a side door opened. A nurse waved someone through. A doctor treated a man in a hallway without asking for payment first. Then it became less quiet. Doctors who had spent years following rules started breaking them in public. Some of them got arrested for it. Some lost their jobs. Some walked out of private floors and into crowds of people who had never been allowed inside. And for the first time in my life, I saw the system crack. Not fall, crack. And there's a difference. A crack lets light in, but it also lets the people inside see who broke the glass. That's when they came for me. It didn't take them long. They traced the stolen liver. They traced the timing. They traced the missing surgeon. They traced enough to know where the organ had gone. To chase. That's when I learned they didn't just want me. They wanted it back. I remember Nora saying, "They can't do that." I looked at her and said nothing. Because we both knew they could. They could write a report. They would call it unlawful possession of medical property. They could call my son evidence. They could call a living child a mistake that needed to be corrected. That was the moment I stopped being scared for myself. I grabbed everything I could. I'm talking cash, papers, medicine, clothes, the kind of things you pack when you know home is no longer a place. It's just the last location they have for you. And just like that, we ran. For a while, we barely stayed one step ahead. Barely. We changed cars, changed streets, slept in places that smelled like mold and old smoke. Nora kept Chase low and covered whenever we moved. He was weak, but better. That made it worse somehow. Every time I looked at him, alive because of what I had done, I knew that I would do it again. That's the truth. Not the pretty version, but the truth. I would do it again. The lights found us on the third night. And at first, they were just headlights in the rain, then more, too steady to be random, too patient to be lost. Nora looked at me, and I looked at the road, and then the chase started. The chase was fast and violent, and there was no way out. The city became streaks of light and water. Tires screamed on wet pavement. Chase was in the back, silent again, because fear had become something he understood too well. Nora kept one hand on him and one on the door. She was ready to jump out of a moving car if that's what it took. Every turn bought us seconds. That was all. Seconds. I drove like a man with nothing behind him and everything in front of him. But there are only so many roads, only so many turns, only so much luck. I knew how it ended before it ended. That's the thing about being trapped. There's a moment when panic leaves and math takes over. I had 3 people in the car. They wanted one, me. So I made the call. I pulled into a dark stretch, got Nora and Chase out, and told her not to argue. She argued anyway. Of course she did. I kissed her once, then I put my hand on Chase's face and told him to listen to his mother. He asked if I was coming. I said soon. That was a lie. But it was the kind of lie that gets someone moving. I drove away alone, and a few moments later, they caught me. The holding cell smelled like sweat, bleach, and old regret. Men sat shoulder to shoulder on metal benches, some drunk, some angry. Nobody cared who I was at first. In a place like that, everybody has a story, and none of them matter until food shows up or someone starts bleeding. I sat near the bars and waited for the fear to come, but it didn't. Maybe I was empty. Maybe everything human in me had been spent getting Chase out. Maybe I had crossed so many lines that prison felt less like punishment, more like a receipt. They charged me with everything they could think of. Theft, kidnapping, assault, medical interference. I remember laughing at that one. Medical interference. That's what they call saving my son. Interference. The world outside argued about me. Some called me a monster. Some called me a hero. Both sides were wrong. I was a father. That's worse than both when your child is dying. Prison didn't break me. It taught me. That's what people don't understand about cages. They don't just hold criminals, they hold teachers. Men who know tunnels, no map shows. Men who know names that never get written down. Men who can look at a system and tell you where it leaks. At first, I kept to myself. It's pretty easy when you have nothing to say. But silence gets noticed in prison. Eventually, an old inmate sat across from me in the cafeteria and said, "You're the hospital guy." I said nothing. He smiled. "That's fine. You don't have to talk. But if you ever want to leave this place alive and stay gone, you should learn to listen." So I listened. I learned which guards gambled, which ones drank, which cameras worked, and which ones were decorations. I learned how people moved money without moving their bodies, how names changed, how papers appeared, how borders cared less about guilt than signatures. I learned how people disappear. Every system has a door, and every door has a hinge. Every hinge has a weakness. The trick is not strength. Strength gets you caught. The trick is patience. You have to wait until the world looks away, then you become someone else. I studied everything, not like a man planning a crime, like a man planning a birth. Because the Jack who went into prison could not leave it. That man was too known, too watched, too useful as a symbol. I needed to become nobody, and nobody is hard to find. And then one day, I was gone. No speech, no final fight, no dramatic goodbye, just absence. One morning they opened a door, expecting me to be where men like me aren't supposed to be. And I wasn't. By the time they knew that, I was already past the first layer. By the time they reached the second, I was under the city. By the time the alarms meant anything, I had crawled through enough darkness to understand that freedom doesn't always look like sunlight. Sometimes freedom is filth and water and concrete scraping your back. Sometimes freedom is holding your breath. I came out the other side a different man. Then I found Nora, I found Chase. They were still watching them. And of course they were. Hospitals don't like losing money, and governments don't like embarrassment. Powerful people don't like examples, but they were not close enough. Nora had done what I told her to do. She kept moving. Never the same place twice, never the same name too long. She trusted people I told her to trust and ignored people who looked too helpful and kept Chase alive with medicine bought under names that didn't belong to any of us. When I saw them again, I almost didn't move. Chase looked taller. That's what got me. Not healthy, not safe, taller. Like time had passed without asking my permission. He saw me and ran into me so hard it hurt. I didn't care. We had new names, new papers, a new country waiting. We moved before anyone could react. Not fast like panic. Fast like practice. Somewhere far away, no one knew us. The beach didn't look real the first time I saw it. Maybe because nothing peaceful had looked real to me in years. There was jungle behind us and water in front of us, and the air smelled like salt instead of disinfectant. Nobody asked for insurance. Nobody scanned a wristband. Nobody looked at Chase like he was a cost. He ran in the sand. He actually ran. Not the fake run he used to do when he wanted us to think he felt better. Not 3 steps and a smile. before sitting down. Real running, arms out, feet kicking sand, laughing so hard he had to stop and bend over. Nora cried. I didn't. Not at first. I just watched him. My son. Alive. Healthy. Free. And for the first time, there was no Elroy joke, no hospital bag, no pills lined up by the bed, no fear hiding in the corner waiting for me that night. For the first time, he wasn't sick. They built a system to decide who gets to live. I just decided not to listen. All right. The have and the have-nots. That's quite a story. I do want to highlight our awesome members. We love making these stories. We love putting out this content for you guys. And it would not be possible at all without the people that support us. So as part of our membership program, we do give early access to these stories and these videos. And we've taken a few questions this week from people who got early access. So figured we'd do a little Q&A. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look here. So first question that we got for the story. Do you think Jack was justified in what he did? Or did he become the same kind of person he was fighting against?
I don't think that those are mutually exclusive. I don't really like either description. Justified, I mean, in the context of the story, yes, but he definitely didn't become. What was the second part?
Become the person he was fighting against.
No, he did not become the machine. He did not become the elite. He did not become. So no. So if I have to pick one of the two, I have to pick the first option, but neither. He's a hero. So he's justified. I guess. I don't. In the context of the story, he's justified. Sure.
I think this is going to be a crazy gray area answer where I play it down the middle like always, but I think his actions can be. I think you can justify his actions, but I don't think his whole thing is justifiable. Like, I think you can. What I mean by that is I think you can justify why he did what he did. Like, you can wrap your head around that and understand it. But it doesn't excuse what he did.
Well, he went to jail.
He went to jail. I mean, I guess just on a moral level. Like, is what he did okay?
I don't know. I really don't. I'm going to go ahead and say no. Just for safety reasons.
All right. Well, that's a good transition. So the second one that we got, was there ever a real chance for Chase to be saved without everything spiraling the way it did? Or was the system always going to fail him? I mean, that's one of those things where, like, you really don't know. It didn't seem like Chase was on the best trajectory with his failing liver. But I mean, that's where you could loop in things like, if your faith, where it's like, could there be a miracle there? You never know. So I don't know if there's a definitive answer we can give on that.
What's the question again?
Was there ever a real chance for Chase to be saved without everything spiraling the way it did? Or was the system always going to fail him?
I think there was a real chance for him, but it wasn't necessarily about the system or faith. Because I think that every organ can fix itself. And I think there's natural ways to do those things. And there is things you can feed your liver that make it. But we also don't know what was wrong with his liver. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't an alcoholic. But, yeah, you typically can reverse most things. They don't like you to know that, but you can, because I think every 7 years, every cell in your body has been renewed, or whatever it is, every tissue in your body. Maybe it's 20 years. We do decay still, but like everything's reversible.
What do you think the story is really saying about healthcare? Are you criticizing the system itself or the people who operate within it?
That's interesting. It's not necessarily about healthcare as much as just a nice picture or metaphor of the struggle that most people have versus the cakewalk that it perceives to be for the elite. Now, we all know everybody's got problems. Billionaires have no friends, and trust fund kids have horrible different problems and all of that. But, I mean, the healthcare system within itself is all messed up. Like, every organization's messed up. I mean, the more people you get involved in a scenario, the more probability of it being messed up.
I think this one is kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg, because you have a lot of bad actors. So you've got like the elite that want everything for themselves. But then on the flip side, if you look at it just as the system, whether it was set up this way maliciously or not, whenever you are charging egregious amounts of money for these services, inevitably those are going to become exclusively available to the elite because they're the only ones that can afford it. So it's like what came first? Did the system being established in a way where you price out certain demographics, or did it start with, selfish elite people who just want everything for themselves? You can kind of go either way. They go hand in hand.
Well, there's two things there. There's a big part of the system that does actually help out poor people. Like, I had a scenario once where I was in between jobs and I went in and got a bunch of, stuff done. And they were like, your bill's $15,000. And I was like, I don't have insurance. They're like, oh, hold on. Your bill is $3,000. I said, I am unemployed. They said, oh, your bill has been taken care of, sir. Right? So that happens. So that's the system working in its favor, which goes against the story. That's why I don't think the story is really about that. But, the system, I mean, politics aside, RFK is talking about making it all transparent. Like, you need to get a CAT scan or something. They don't tell you how much it costs until it's done, and you get a bill later. That part of the system is fuckery because you should know the price. So now they're working on making it where, like, here's the 5 places you can get a CAT scan, and here's the price at each place, which creates competition. Everybody knows the government bloats everything, and the free market is what controls and dictates an actual price that's fair. So, like in Hawaii, I went to Hawaii a long time ago, and it was very expensive burger. It's like $30, and this was like 10, 15 years ago. I was like, holy crap, but I have to eat. And I asked, I'm like, hey, I'm on Hotwire getting a hotel for the night, because I didn't want to stay with the family or whatever. And I'm like, hey, is there any hotels here that are, or the hotels, like I'm looking at, I'm picking a random one because it's Hotwire. I don't know what it is. And the server was like, oh, the hotel's going to be totally nice. I'm like, really? She's like, you can't have a hotel here in Hawaii and it be bad. It will run out of business.
Because of the competition. My rebuttal.
And the price was cheap. It was $80. And we got there. It was kind of a cool story. They're like room 2702. I'm like, you got 2,000 rooms in this building on the second floor? They're like, oh, no, sir. It's floor 27, room 2. I was like, oh, shit. Get up there. It's floor to ceiling glass, dude. Beautiful, overlooking the mountains and the ocean for $80.
Wow. My one rebuttal to what you said, and I think we do need that transparency, especially with pricing. You put that in any other industry. If you go to a Chipotle and they have a menu up, you're not just going to order and then they're like, oh, it's actually this.
The movie theater does it.
Movie theater, that's fair. But my rebuttal to that, and this is a perfect backdoor for the insurance industry to cover their ass there. It's one of the stupidest things about the healthcare and insurance industry that I think is your network. So let's say there is an open competition of all these hospitals you could choose between. And the ones over on the left are going to save you a lot of money. That's the competition aspect of it. The insurance companies already only support their network. So I think what they'll do is just be like, okay, well, we'll only put the expensive places in our network. So you can't use your insurance at the cheap places. You can pay that out of pocket if you want to.
That applies only to government subsidized insurance policies. So if you have a business of your own and you have your own employees and you get a business plan of health insurance, those networks doesn't matter. It's the Obamacare stuff that has the networks. Like if you go get private insurance, your network is way.
It's expansive, but there's still a network.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I'm saying it backwards though. I'm wondering if actually the network's bigger with the Obamacare because I forget how it works. But the insurance.
They're going to find a loophole.
If insurance is going to cover anything, they are going to cover their own ass.
Yeah.
So
they will figure out a rebuttal for that.
So yeah, is the system flawed? Of course. That's how it works.
All right. Nora felt torn the entire time. Do you think she believed and supported Jack's choices, or was she just trying to survive alongside him?
I think she was trying to survive, but she ended up at that beach.
It worked out for her. I mean,
like if you sat her down and were like, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, she would have said no. You know?
I mean, that is the thing.
She was forced. In the story, she was clearly forced.
By the time she got looped into it, we're kind of past the point of discussing the matter.
Right, it says it like in the story clearly. Like there's nothing at this point. There's nothing to be said.
All right, and our last one. Thank you again to everybody for the questions here. Again, if you want to become a member, subscribe button, and then right below that you can click become a member.
I think it says join or something.
It says join. Early access to videos, exclusive videos. We have a ton of stuff just for members. Live streams that we do, members only. So it helps us keep making content like this, and just supporting us as we, continue to make these awesome stories and connect with you all. But our final one, if Jack had succeeded earlier, before things escalated, do you think the outcome would have been different, or was this always going to end in loss?
That question could be vetted because meaning that they got the transplant done in the hospital. I mean, what was the end of the question? Like, it didn't make any sense.
Or would it always end in loss? Like,
yeah, how did it didn't end in loss. It ended in the loss of their life and stuff, yeah. No, it always would end in loss. He's committing crimes. So either he spends the rest of his life in jail and they take the liver back, or you get the fuck out of Dodge and you lose your identity of their poor scenario in their crappy house. So is that a loss? I mean, they went from an apartment in a city, poor, to living on the beach. And somehow he found cash. Oh, yeah, that's right. He stole cash from the hospital. Now he's rich. I don't see a loss here, dude.
Yeah, things kind of worked out for old boy.
I think the guy kind of, we don't know how it ends, but, the ending that we got, it's not a loss at all.
Things could have been way worse for the old Jack, Nora, and Chase clan.
And looking on the look on his face, happiness.
Could be a lot worse.
Could be a lot worse.
Let us know what you think. Do you agree with his decision making here? Obviously, when a parent is put in a situation like that, I mean, your number one thing in your life is to do whatever you can for your children. So you can justify a lot of that, but it necessarily doesn't make a bad thing good. It just provides justification as to why you did the bad thing. But we're curious to hear what you all have to think. How would you act in the situation? Leave a comment down below, like the video, subscribe, become a member. You know all the things to do. This is 5 to 9.
Set those notifications on.
Hit that little bell so you can get pinged every time we post. And the next time we do, we'll see you there. Peace.
Peace.